Hello, hello, hello. Sorry, we are a few minutes late, but thank you for bearing with us. I am delighted to be here today. Tell me if you can now see me and hear me. I am Mindy, delighted to be here with Melissa Cassidy. Welcome, Melissa, to Flourish Writers.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, what a treat. This is our Flourish Writers coaching call. And those of you who have been Flourish Writers students for a while will know that coaching calls are something Jenny and I dearly love. We get on here with you once a month and just share about the writing life, either tips and tricks, some additional training, just something we've been trying and doing and liking. And today we have the treat of getting to chat with Melissa, who has recently published a book. And we felt like you needed to hear from her for two reasons. The first is that it's always awesome to hear author journeys. How did it go? What do you wish you'd done differently? Give us the inside scoop. And secondly, her topic of what she wrote about is just so important for all of us, especially when you're trying to pair your writing life in with all the other things going on in your life. So Melissa has a wonderful, wonderful story of just seeking the peace of the Lord and leaving busy behind. So we're delighted to get to hear from you today, Melissa.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be able to tell my story today.
Yeah, thank you. And oh, somebody says not seeing you, Mindy. Okay. Somebody else says I can see and hear you both. One of the things you may want to check if the feed pauses for you, then up at the top of your screen you have a green, I think it's reset, or yeah, probably reset button. You can also log out and back on again. And if you're having trouble with the browser, Chrome usually works the best. And Chrome with a computer is top notch. If you need to use a mobile device, go ahead. But if you're not able to, oh, the button says reconnect. Thank you, Gay. If you're not able to see us or hear us, you could always try a different device. So those are your options. But hopefully, between all those various buttons you can click and devices you can try and browsers you can try, you'll be able to see us and hear us. The technology is amazing, but it does sometimes take a little bit of work. Oh, mine is echoing badly. Oh, and now it works. Okay. I could go grab my other mic if needed, but as long as the sound is okay, we'll just try it like this. So I am Mindy Kiker, Jenny's other half at Flourish Writers, for those of you who are joining us new for the first time. I think a lot of you came in through the How to Write Your Book Weekend Writers Retreat that we had recently. And so it's great to get to know you a little bit better. I have so enjoyed the interaction in the Facebook group and just hearing from you all via email. So what a delight to get to connect up with you here in our coaching call. So Melissa, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are tuning in from?
Okay, well, obviously my name is Melissa Cassidy, and first I just want to thank you, Mindy, so much for inviting me to be part of your mentor call. I grew up in the Toronto area, moved quite a bit, and I came from a ministry family. So I came to know God at a really young age and grew up in the church. I've been married for 26 years, living now in the Windsor, Ontario area, just outside of Windsor. And I have two grown children, one in university and one with special needs who's still living at home. I've had a really interesting array of jobs over the years, but my latest job was with a ministry called Open Bible Faith Fellowship of Canada. I worked there 10 years as an administrator, and so I helped run the organization, and that's the job that I left to take a sabbatical for a year.
And people are going to hear more about this sabbatical idea
Yeah.
when you share with us the topic of your book. So that's really exciting. And is your child with special needs your youngest one?
Actually, he's my oldest. He's 23 now, 22, 23. Bad mom, I can't remember. But he just graduated college, and we're so proud of him. He's doing so well.
Oh, congratulations. That's amazing. And so you are a longtime Canadian,
Mm-hmm.
our northern neighbor. That's so fun. So are you tired of the snow yet? Or is that
No,
just
we haven't gotten anywhere I'm at. I'm in Ontario, and so I think I saw a few snowflakes today. Maybe the first ones that we've gotten. Whereas in Western Canada, I think they've had some pretty good snow.
okay? That's handy. So you're eking out your autumn just a little few more days maybe.
Yes, yeah. And I don't mind the snow right up till Christmas and New Year's. After New Year's, snow can go away.
If only the winter time were that cooperative, but it's probably
Yeah.
not in Canada.
No, not at all.
So you are the author of Coming Home, Leaving Busy to Save My Soul. And I'm just curious how this book came to be. Tell us a little bit of your story.
Well, in 2017, I went to International House of Prayer in Kansas City to participate in one of their 8-day immerses. And right on the initial, after they did the initial praise and worship, they introduced all the different people who were going to be facilitating this event, and they quoted their favorite Bible verse, and then they asked a really pivotal question, which was, if you could ask God for one thing on this Immerse weekend, knowing that the answer would be yes, what would you ask for? And immediately, just like every other person, I have, financial needs or situational needs going on in my life. But all I could think about at that very moment is how wonderful it would be to have a rest. And I thought about it, would a month be enough? And I'm like, no, a month wouldn't be enough. And I concluded that I would need a year. I just craved to have a year of time where I could take care of my family, rest, spend time with the Lord. And I really, really wanted to write a book. And I just felt like I was never going to get to that if I didn't purpose to make a huge space of time so that my creativity could flow.
Oh, my word. So you made that request of the Lord, and then how long was it until you actually started your sabbatical?
So that was in the autumn, I believe, of 2017. And at the time, it was impossible. I didn't know how that could happen. So, I prayed that prayer. I wrote it down in my prayer journal. It was close to my heart. I was definitely thinking about it. But it was not until, I'm going to say the decision was made around August 15th of 2018. I remember my husband and I were having a conversation, and we were going through something as a family, and it involved a lot of rejection and pain for me. And I remember just thinking, oh my goodness, I've made all these decisions in my life, hoping to get to achieve a certain objective in family life and ministry life and work life and home life. And I felt like I wasn't experiencing the result at all. And I was really feeling worn down. I was grieving. I was feeling disillusioned. There was a lot of emotions going on. And so my husband and I were at peace. We weren't warring against each other at all. But something just snapped. And I thought, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to take a year off and get this all sorted out. And so the very next day, I got the title of my book. And so I reserved my domain name, I reserved my social media accounts, having no idea how I was going to achieve all that. I just knew enough at that time to do that because I figured if I wrote a book, I was going to need a website and I would want to have social media accounts. But I didn't know how to write the book, but I started freaking out at that point. I started telling everybody, I just quit my job. Now, mind you, when I say I quit my job, I gave my resignation, but it took another 3 months to actually leave my job. So I did not leave my job until November 21st of 2018.
18.
Yes. And by then, the really neat thing was I had gone on a second immerse weekend just weeks before I was finished because I wanted to use up my leftover vacation time. And so I arrived at the immerse a year after I had prayed that prayer with it was happening. And I was just so blessed because they do some prophetic prayer over you, and what they spoke over me just confirmed my decision. So I felt God's blessing in what I was doing, and I felt peace, even though there were tremendous fears I had to face, and a lot of things happened along the way. But I just knew that God was going to do something amazing in that year.
Oh, I love that when you prayed the prayer, it was a year before you were on the threshold of seeing that come about.
Yes.
And I think that's such a good reminder for all of us. You know, we live in a time where we can make many things happen very quickly, but the Lord doesn't work that way. And we need to hold on to the promise that He's given us. And, you know, we move, we act. You bought your domain name, you set up your social media accounts. We act and we step out in faith, but it's really God who opens the doors at the right time. I'm sure you can look back now and see how much He had prepared you during that year to be ready for what you had coming in on November 21st, 2018.
Yes. Yes. Well, in like looking at our situation, I mean, we live a debt-free lifestyle, but we had worked up a little bit of a line of credit. So my husband was naturally very concerned about the decision I was making, but I was at a point emotionally where it just wasn't a choice for me. I really had to do it. And so he recognized that and he supported me in it. But I also recognized for me to lose my full-time income, we needed to make some drastic changes. And so we went through the budget and we cut all in our budget categories. But graciously, even though that 3-month period from the time I resigned until we were able to recruit somebody, train them, and pass over the mantle of the job I was doing, even though that time was excruciating because I really wanted to be done, in that time, we made the changes immediately, not waiting until my job was done.
Yes.
And so what happened is we were able to pay off the little line of credit loan that we had. And so we did go into the year completely debt-free except for our mortgage.
Oh, that's amazing. So that 3 months where you had to really persevere. It probably felt quite painful. You know, you told me that I could do this. And you know, I can imagine it because I've been in that situation myself. You spoke the word, God, you promised this to me. Why is it taking 3 months? And yet look at the blessing He had prepared for you in that.
Yeah, it was definitely mixed. There was blessing, obviously, financial blessing, and it really was the best thing for the organization I was leaving, but it was painful and I cried a lot of tears and I worked very hard during that time. And I had some recuperation to do after that was over. I just didn't initially launch into my year. I arrived into my year very worn down, exhausted, emotionally at my bottom. And I honestly didn't even know if I could write a book at that point. I was that bottomed out and burnt out.
Mm. Mm. So how long did you wait then, and how did you know when you were ready to write the book?
Well, it was about 3 months in. So I want to say it was early February that I was making the beds, because my initial time off, I was working on getting myself well. I talk a lot about that in the book of what I did initially, some of the processes I had to go through, but I had to get myself well. I had some physical symptoms. I had some forgiveness to work through. I had emotional symptoms. And then I was sitting at a desk for 10 years doing almost zero physical activity except for a few bursts of fitness that I tried to do and tried to incorporate and never could. So my body was not accustomed to walking around and even cleaning my house. My husband's like, okay, you're home full time. I'd like to see a clean house. And just to get up and clean for a couple of hours physically was really tough for me. So that 3 month period, I was working myself into giving my house a good top to bottom cleaning, getting better, whole. But I remember one morning I was making my bed and I thought, oh, I have this huge project. I have this huge goal to write a book, and I have the idea, I have the message. But I have no idea. I have no idea how to go about it. And I remember praying and saying, Lord, if you want me to write this book, you're going to have to bring things across my path, because I don't know what to do. And I don't know if it was that day or just in the few days afterwards, but I received an email from one of your writers, one of your speakers, Asha Tara. And I'm on her email list. I had purchased one of her books, and she was extending an invitation to partake in a FlourishWriters free online conference. And free was what I could afford because it wasn't making an income. And it was just too good to be true as far as I was concerned. So I signed up and I devoured that course. I listened to every speaker. I signed up for every email list and all the freebies. And I just consumed, and I even saved all the information I could into a OneNote folder. And I knew that this was answering so many questions I had. And I got a road of step by step how to follow. And I just started taking those steps. So thank you.
Oh, I just love that story because it is so our desire to create resources that as much as we can free, we got to cover the costs of
Mm-hmm.
delivering everything and housing everything and being able to, I've got 4 boys to put through university. But we love it that we can give away so much incredible quality. And like you say, when you have that desire and you really prioritize it and you say, I am going to take advantage of these free days and I'm not going to let any of these videos escape me, then it can be done. And then you get this incredible wealth of knowledge. I think, was that the first conference where there were like 25 speakers?
Yeah, it was big, and and then the funny thing is, we just started doing some renovations the week you put it on, so I couldn't even get to the videos, I think, until the week after. But fortunately, with me being home full time, I would just put them on. I didn't watch them; I listened to
Yeah.
them, and
Yeah.
so I just had them on while I was, washing floors, doing dishes, cleaning, and I have the benefit. I don't have young children at home anymore, and I had a lot of free time. So I took notes. Like I said, I clipped and saved, and yeah, that it was definitely the information that I received from your conference that just gave me all the tools I needed to succeed, and I'm so, so grateful to you for that.
Oh, that is just so humbling and rewarding for us because it's you we made it for. And so to hear that you had the passion, you had the desire, you had this message burning on your heart. I want to do this, God, for you. And then boom, there were these resources all packaged together
Yes.
in this neat, tidy place. It's like, yes, because then it also reminds us that, or reassures us, I guess, affirms that we were hearing from the Lord also.
Very timely.
Yes. And you were in a position to really make the most of it because you had quit your job. Even that is the Lord's timing.
It absolutely was. There when I think of all the things that fit together for me this year, it's astounding. It is. Everything led to the next thing, led to the next thing, led to the next thing. It was
It,
quite the journey.
you can see the Lord piecing it all together. And it's almost like your writing journey is really his writing journey to orchestrate for you. And you have to look around, you have to, as Sharita sends out an email and you have to click on the link and you have to sign up. It's not like it just gets plunked right into your lap. You're
Oh, no.
looking, you're seeking, you're saying, okay, God, let my eyes be open, let me see what you want me to see, I'm ready. And but then he serves it up to you.
Yeah, I did take multiple steps. I did invest myself. I grasped at everything. It took a lot of work, but it was so worth it. And I was going in the right direction. I was going
Yeah.
in the direction that brought me from one step to another. And it wasn't like it was easy. It was challenging. There were many times I was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? But God was with me the whole way.
Yes, amen. So you talk about balancing work and periods of rest and what that looks like and how it benefits not just ourselves but also our households. Could you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So when like our household at this point has myself and my husband and my son. And so when I was working full time, we were both working full time shifts, and then we were coming home and we were divvying up the chores that needed to be done. So my husband was, tackling the laundry. I was doing shopping and cooking and trying to prepare meals, and so we were all extremely busy. And my son, he was contributing as well. But when I came home full time, at least initially, I'll be honest, uh, the writing has kind of taken over. And so I do feel right now that I am working. It's just a different form of work, and it's definitely
Yes.
a form of work that I thrive off of, and it's flexible. But I'll be honest, my husband, the first few months, I was so attentive to his needs. I was making his tea in the morning and making his lunches, and the house was sparkling clean. And, I was very available, very relaxed. And then after I took the conference and I started down the path and designing a website. I've never designed a website before, but I learned how to do that, and I started a blog. So now I'm posting weekly. So my husband was like, "Wait, what just happened?" But I mean, compared to working full time, I was much more available. So,
Yes.
yes, so I've received a lot of fulfillment and rest, but it has benefited my family as well. Uh, Being able to give my son rides, and even though I'm not quite the Susie homemaker I was initially, I am still very dedicated to meeting my family's needs and being that flex person and helping them as much as I can. So uh, that role is so important. When you have a couple and they're both working full time and you're both maxed out, you're having these, well, my work's more important because of this, and your work isn't as important as mine, and who's going to take this person to the doctors, and then you're having these schedule fights. And I was able to minimize that and take that stress away. It was a very positive thing.
Mm. Yeah, because as women, we can tend to bear a lot of the brunt of the domestic responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And we think we're supposed to. And really, I think when God called us to join together with a spouse, and there are even people listening who don't have a spouse. It's just them. Single parenting. Oh my goodness, that is tough stuff. But I think we should use all the resources within our family we're all a family together, and we all need to chip in together.
Yes.
And it's not for mama. Mama does not equal maid. But we want to make ourselves available and support and love and nurture. But then when you have that book project, that passion project, I think it's perfectly valid to say to your husband and to the family, this is really something that is important to me, and it's something that the Lord put on my heart, and I would like you guys to see it as valid and bless me to invest my time into it. And I'll take care of you, and I'll be there as much as I can, but I ask you to honor my writing. It's a real thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. We've been, going through that journey this year as my writing has increased. And it's really important to see the arts in general. I think that our society is starting to, I think for a while, pursuing any kind of arts it's very difficult to make a living off of it, and people don't always value it the same as some of the more practical vocations. But I think that there's an emergence of the arts. I believe that God is especially resurrecting the arts in the church, and all those things that are done creatively, and we need to value them and set apart that time and have people respect the time that we set apart to do those things as well.
Yes. Yeah. Very. Amen. Preach it, sister. And people will not necessarily do that. You have to advocate, and you do it with respect. You do it with kindness, but you need to say, hey, baby, this is a real thing.
Yeah, this is, writing life it looks completely different than I expected. It's, the routine that I'm doing now, I mean, it works, it's amazing, but it isn't as glamorous as I thought it would be. I can go like all day in my pajamas and no makeup, and I could look like, just a homeless person, and my husband will come home and be like, what, and so I'm realizing but this is the real deal. I'm writing a book. I'm marketing a book, and I'm writing weekly on a blog. And so, obviously we need to discipline ourselves and try to, make sure that we bring the best of ourselves as well. But real writing as a full-time venture, it's quite a bit different than the picture I had in my mind.
I actually think that spending the whole day in your pajamas is one of the perks of the writing life. I mean,
I like it.
Because I think of all the time, like if you calculate all the getting ready time, the hair and makeup and then travel that you don't have to do now, you're purchasing hours a week.
Yes, and commute times.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it. I love those days when I'm not going to need to go anywhere or be on camera or something. I'm like, yippee! I can just roll right over to my keyboard.
When I was doing the calculations about coming home and leaving my income, I realized there was a lot of cost to having a job. So I'm not saying everybody should quit their jobs, but you do need to look at what it costs you to have a job. And so we saved money on fuel. We saved money on insurance because I became an occasional driver. I saved money on makeup because I don't put it on every day. I saved money on clothing because I wasn't constantly needing to go shopping and update my wardrobe. there were so many ways we economized just by me making the decision to stay home. Oh, and I don't know if you have this where you live, but we have economy times to do your laundry. So after 7 o'clock and before 7 o'clock in the morning, if you run your dishwasher and you do your laundry and you just run your power in those economy times, well, we got a rebate of like $60 on our hydro bill for the first time in our entire marriage. They gave us money back, and I had saved all that money by just paying attention to that. But when you're working full time, when you're busy, you can't do that.
That's amazing. I don't think they have that where I am. Probably in some maybe bigger urban areas. I'm not sure. They're trying to basically get you, the whole city, to not demand electricity at the same time.
Okay.
Because it's probably hard to supply. That's what I'm guessing. But
yeah, they have non-peak times. I'm sorry about my doggie. She doesn't normally bark.
Oh, what kind of doggie do you have?
She's a Morkie. She's my cuddle bear. And she normally doesn't bark. Actually, I'm surprised she's not right beside me begging to get picked up. But there must be something outside that's bothering her. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine. We like doggies here. So you really dug into the Word and you found what God tells us about rest and how that relates to our faith and just our health and our families. So could you just share a little bit of the biblical foundation that you uncovered? Oh, there she is.
I'm just going to hold her to keep her calm. This was an extremely spiritual experience for me. I've experienced God in ways I've never experienced him through this step of faith of it's more than just taking a year off, because I quit my job and I still don't even know what's happening after next month. But I know that I was working in a ministry job. I was involved in ministry at the church and, taking care of my family. And I was really experiencing a lot of signs of stress. And I could look at people who were working alongside me who were busier than I was, and they were coping better than I was. So I think one thing that I want to say right off is we're all different. We all have different capacity for stress and busyness in our lives. And obviously I was maxed out on mine. So that was happening. And then I felt like there was a huge disconnect between the rest and peace that the Bible talks about and what I was experiencing as a Christian believer. And so when I look at the obstacles of slowing down, I found two things. One is that the standards of living set both by the world, but even within the church, required me to work more than I could manage. If I hoped to take care of my health and my family and my home and my relationships, including my relationship with God. And the other thing was that if I decided to work less, I was going to have to spend less. And that really put me at odds with society norms of, what people do, the eating out, just the things that people just put money down for without thinking. And I was going to have to dig deep and make some really big changes in my life that way. And there was tremendous fear and vulnerability in making the decision to leave my job for a year. And to be honest, there still is. I still battle doubts about, did God really speak to me? And I'm clinging to his promises of provision and protection every day. And I really believe I have promises from him. And I really do believe I've heard from him, but I really feel tested in that sometimes. So it wasn't like it was this magical, wonderful experience. And I felt elation every single day. No, I had to work through some really tough emotions about my self-worth, my value outside of work. Because I am the worst for defining myself by what I achieve, what I do. And I don't know, I think I had equated God's love with accomplishment and with working for him. And, so for the first time, I had to just kind of say, you know what? I don't know if I'm making the right decision, but I just have to trust that God loves me so much, and he loves me for who I am. And even if I'm going off track here and making a wrong decision, that he will gently reroute me. But I'm just kind of placing myself broken in front of him and saying, I just need you to love me. And I need to experience that love outside of whether I'm good or whether I'm working hard enough. Do you love me? And do you value me? And do you see my need? And I've felt like God has answered that.
Mm. Melissa, I'm so glad that you were just vulnerable of expressing, how hard it's been and how much fights against you. Because we all get our identity from stuff outside ourselves. It's just so hard to think that I have value just because of who I am, not what I do, not what I achieve. Oh my word. That's really hard to just live out. Like, you can acknowledge it theoretically, but then when you get in bed every night and you kind of review your day, I mean, what makes you feel like it was a good day? It's usually the stuff you got done, the things you achieved, the progress you made on something. It's not just, oh, I sat around and talked to Jesus all day.
No, it's well, and the thing is, I had to decide early on because I had no idea where this was going. I decided that even if I wrote a book and nobody read it, even if I didn't even publish it, if I just wrote it, then I had accomplished a major thing, an important thing in my life. And then once I did publish it, I'm like, okay, so I published this book and I'm so proud of it and I really am so happy with it. But even if nobody buys it, I'm still going to rejoice in that and be grateful that I did it. It still means something at the end of the day. But it's so easy and so tempting to get caught up in, page views on your website, likes and shares on your social media. And then you're checking, for me, it's KDP reports. I'm checking them all the time. And, I went through a few weeks where nobody purchased a book, nobody looked at my book. And then you have to dig really deep at those moments and go, you know what? It still was worth doing. And it's
Yes.
okay if it's small and hidden. It was an offering before the Lord, and I believe the Lord blessed it, and I believe that the Lord, it came from things that He's spoken to me. And so at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if anybody acknowledges it. It was a good thing, but you still wrestle with all the very real emotions. Every day is something new.
I want to read a few comments and questions we've had here. So Mary says, I resonate with what you're saying on a deep and personal level. I retired at 54 years old and recognized I was on the verge of an emotional breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
Jane says, your honesty is so refreshing, Melissa. And Robin says, if you're truly following God, he doesn't allow slackness. And then Kathy says, please address what the Bible says about peace and rest. So give us some of those nuggets that you found in the Word.
Yeah, that's amazing. That was really a journey for me, even just writing my book, because I started looking and searching out these scriptures. And we talk so much about working for the Lord, but we don't talk as much about resting for the Lord. And there's a balance of work and rest, and it's so important to value the rest part as much as the work part. And in the Bible, if you look at the Levitical law, where he lists the 10 commandments, number one, God took a day of rest himself. That one's, right there at the beginning of the Bible. But if you look in the Levitical law and you look at the 10 commandments, so one of the 10 commandments is to honor the Sabbath. And it didn't say go to church, it said honor the Sabbath. So it's about resting in that day, not just going to church. So obviously I believe in church attendance, but I think it's so much more than that. I think it's supposed to be a day of replenishment for ourselves, and it's supposed to be sacred. And then in and along all the rules about sexuality, property, justice, and hygiene, all these really intricate laws that God gives his people, he talks about, like, over and over again, about honoring the Sabbath. And he also mentions um, this principle of working, plowing the farmers, plowing the fields in 6 years, and then on the seventh year, not plowing. And that the promise in the Bible is that they would actually get enough crops from the sixth year to last 3 years. And so it's to last the year of rest. And then when you would plant after your year of rest, it had to last another year until you got your harvest. But then it looks like he threw in a bonus that it would even last an extra year. And I started thinking about that. I thought, from biblical account, it sounds like even the children of Israel had a difficult time being obedient to that commandment. And I thought about it. I thought, if you're a farmer and you don't plant, you're not eating. And I just thought, wow, what an incredible step of faith that would be, to be that family that said, nope, we're not planting this year. We're going to let the land rest like God commands. And all your neighbors are planting their fields, and they're looking at you like, what, you're lazy, or you're too fanatical. and meanwhile, the amount of faith that you would have to have in God's provision to walk that out in real life, if you really think about it, it's astounding. And I think that's why the children of Israel really struggled with doing that. So those were just some things that stuck out to me in the Word. But obviously, number one, we're in the New Testament, not the Old, and most of us don't farm. So I'm not trying to get legalistic and say, you have to do it this way exactly. And, every 7 years of work, or every 6 years of work, you got to take a full year off and not work. I don't say these things to try to create these new rules for us. But I think we need to look at God's heart and say, why did he say those things? Why was that important to him? And I think if you really believe in the Lord, that's a huge step of faith. And I think what he was trying to say there is, I'm your God, and I want you to work, because work is healthy, work is good. But at the end of the day, your work isn't providing for you. I'm providing for you. Yeah. And I think he knows that we as humans, we need time to explore outside of work. So I believe that God has made rest sacred, and it's like a punctuation to the sentence of work.
Oh, that's well said. Yes. And I know in one of the passages, one of the curses that God gives against like disobedience is, you will not enter into my rest. And oh, that's so chilling. I'm like, the rest is there for us. And it's actually a curse to us to not enter into it.
You know what? And I know I can't think of the reference right off the bat right now, but I have it in my book. And there's actually a passage of scripture that fully equates enjoying God's earthly rest, or embracing God's earthly rest, is a connection to embracing his rest in eternity. So they're very closely linked. Yeah, it's important.
That is so good.
Close to the heart of God.
Okay, we're getting some good comments and questions here. Jill says, there is no small offering, and the smallest can be the greatest, like the widow's mite. Yeah, just talking about your book. And then we've got some questions about, let's just jump over to some of the details of your writing. journey and just how that worked for you. So Monica wants to know if you self-published or traditionally published.
Okay, so in the conference that Flourish Writers offered, they talked about the different publishing options and what the pros and cons of them were. And that was really critical to me because I had some conceptions. And so I really liked the print on demand option because I didn't have any money to go into this venture. So I liked the idea that I didn't have to pre-purchase books if I didn't have the money. And I wouldn't have a case of them or a pallet of them in my garage taking up space, unsold. I wouldn't have a publisher with a warehouse full of them. It would literally be if somebody ordered it, then they would pay for it and then a book would be printed. So I went with the KDP. It resonated with me. There are a few cons with having gone that way, but when I weigh all the options and look at everything, it's still, that was the right way for me to publish. And right now, I think I would continue that way.
Are the cons something that you feel free to share?
Sure. Okay, so it's as a Canadian, working with Kindle and Amazon, that's a U.S. company. It's based in the U.S. That yes, they have the .ca, so that's great. But what happens is the books, number one, are non-returnable. So what that means is if we have a huge chain in Canada called Chapters or Indigo. And so I've tried to set up a book signing with them. And they said, look, we can put your book on our website. We can order your book in if, sell it through the website. But we will not stock it on our shelves because I want to make sure I say this right. So the Canadian counterpart to Amazon won't return the books if Indigo's customers decide they don't want them. They can't send them back to Amazon. So they don't want, if a customer is not satisfied with my book, they don't want to be stuck with my book. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so that's one. The other is that based on I'm very happy with how much I make on my book if I decide to buy author's copies. And I'm very happy with the amount I'm getting from KDP if they sell my book. But if a Canadian bookstore buys my book, I only make 35 cents a book. And it's very minimal. So there's no advantage to me really going around to bookstores and asking me to bring in the books. It's better for me to try to sell directly or send them just to Amazon. So those are just a few of the things that I face as a Canadian. But when I look at it, I still wouldn't have done it any other way.
And could you buy author copies and just stock those bookstores yourself?
Yes. So Indigo has generously said, look, you can still have your book on our shelf. It's just I can't have it on the shelves nationally. I can have it on the shelf locally.
If you drive your copies over.
Yeah. So I'm bringing them, say I bring them 10 copies and they're going to sell it. I would have to increase the price from what they sell it on Amazon to make it worth my while. And then I take all the risk. So if I bring them 10 books and customers rifle through those books and bend pages and rip pages, or say they buy it and they don't like it and they bring it back, all that risk goes to me. And so just, some people might be willing to take that risk at this stage with my book being so new and me just embarking on my first marketing opportunities. I didn't feel that was the way I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Laura says, what does a day of writing look like for you? How many days a week did you set aside to write to complete your book?
Okay, so this is pretty crazy, and this is probably not the norm, but I just feel like it's just been a very supernatural, interesting experience. And also, if you know me, I am very much of just both feet in kind of person. So I'll really quickly encapsulate my journey. I went to the conference with FlourishWriters, obviously. I signed up for a lot of things, and in that, I got an invitation to be part of a Build a Blog group. So the next thing I know, in March, I am building a blog from scratch. Never had done that before, and then I launched it April 1st. And then when I launched it April 1st, I heard through all these emails I was getting from our wonderful speakers at FlourishWriters about NaNoWriMo. And so I joined NaNoWriMo in April and set a really modest goal of just doing a blog post a week. And that was huge for me because I had never done that much writing before. But I killed it. I did that and I was very successful. And I loved NaNoWriMo, which is free. And so I was like, oh, I should do this all the time. But I found out the next one was in July. So I think at that point I decided I'm going to write my book in July. I'm going to do the 50,000 word goal and I'm going to do it in July. So I started just looking ahead to that. And so when July 1st came, I had scraps of writing, but I accounted for that and I did not include that in my NaNoWriMo amount. So when I was finished, I wrote every day in July, almost without fail. Occasionally I took a day off to observe a Sabbath and just rest my mind and give myself a break. But I wrote every single day pretty much. And I finished my book in the July NaNoWriMo. And then I set up, the month of August was editing and designing the cover, formatting the book, and I had it published by August 28th.
Oh my word.
Yes, that was how quick it happened.
Had you done a lot of thinking and planning, and did you have the book very clearly in your mind beforehand?
No, not really. I mean, I knew basically the message. And like I said, I had done a little bit of journaling and just some small notes. And so I went back over those and grabbed tidbits of that. But, and this is another thing. When I did that April NaNoWriMo, somebody mentioned about they were using Scrivener. And I'm like, Scrivener, what's Scrivener? And so they told me what that was. And I have a very, from my administrative background, I love organization. And so when I heard what Scrivener was, I'm like, that's what I need. Because I was thinking, like, how do you piece together so much information in an orderly way? So I because I had won the April NaNoWriMo, I'd fulfilled my goal. I got like 50% off of Scrivener. So I got Scrivener and I was just like a kid in a candy store with Scrivener. I just loved it. So as soon as I got that, I started adding some structure to what I was going to write. But when I started the July NaNoWriMo, I think I'm positive I did not even have 3,000 words written.
That's awesome. What a great testimony to that initiative. It really does put the fire under you, doesn't it?
It does. Like I'm actually doing the NaNoWriMo now. I'm trying to write a course. And so for me, I'm most alert in the morning. Sometimes I even wake up in the middle of the night with thoughts and I'm like, I got to get up and write this down. So because I am not working, I have some of that flexibility. I will get up out of bed. I will turn on the light, make myself a coffee. I will write for a couple hours and then I'll go back to bed. But most of the time I don't do that. I don't like to disrupt my sleep like that. So I wake in the morning, I have my time with the Lord and I pull out my iPad and I just type away whatever's going and try to do that first because more and more as things come up in the day, my energy and creativity for writing does wane. I am not a nighttime writer.
Yeah, each person has to learn when it works best for them. Some people come alive at night and the house is quiet and they just can put in 4 or 5 amazing hours and turn out lots of words. But other people need to wake up fresh and do it first thing. So yeah, each person needs to learn what works for them.
Yes.
Robin says, can we have your contact information and the name of your book? We will post that, but go ahead and just tell us, Melissa, give us some of your specifics.
Okay, so the title that came to me like the day after I gave my resignation had this like moment. The title that came to me was Coming Home, Leaving Busy to Save My Soul. And so I started telling people, I'm going to write a book. And they're like, what is it called? And I tell them, and they would just look at me. um, so that is the title, Coming Home, Leaving Busy to Save My Soul. And my website that I built for the book and for my blogging is called leavingbusy.com. I'm just so thrilled that I got that name because it was,
That's amazing.
oh, I'm like, how is that not taken? And then, of course, I'm on all the major social media, and you just look for Leaving Busy, and you should find me.
Awesome. I was just making notes for people so they can see that just
I
in
can
case.
hear the typing.
I want them to be, oh, yes, sorry. It makes a
That's
noise. Jenny's always like, you can't type with a microphone. It sounds terrible. Sorry. And you mentioned creating your author website. I thought that also might be something people would want to hear how you did that. What did you use? How did that work for you? Just in case we have listeners who are wanting to create a website.
Yeah, so I'm not sure which one of your speakers offhand connected me with, I'm trying to remember her name. You know, I'm sorry, I can't recall it right now. Elite Blogging Academy. Is that sound familiar to you? Elite Blogging Academy.
Mm-hmm.
So it just the timing. As soon as I came out of the February conference, it was, I think, the first weekend of March, they were having this build a blog. And so I just got swept into it. I signed up for something and I didn't even know what it was. And the next thing I knew, I was being told, okay, you need to sign up with this web hosting thing. And then these are the boxes you check off, and this is how much it's going to cost. And then you need these plugins, and then the next step is you're going to do this, and the next step is you're going to do that. So I just started doing it. I had a discussion with my husband. So up till then, I had a budget. We had not talked about investing in me for a blog. This was all just coming up. So we kind of made a deal. I said, I don't really know what it's going to cost. They're not telling. And all I know is the cost of the course, which I knew I couldn't afford because I thought I need to save every penny for the things that are non-negotiable. And in writing a book and having a blog, they're the things, the nuts and bolts that you need to make it happen. I had no money for education. So so I just followed, we had a discussion and we settled on $1,000. $1,000 is what I could invest in myself for this year. And I had until the end of the year for it to turn some kind of profit to justify me continuing. Otherwise, I needed to go back to work. And so I signed up for the web hosting. I signed up with an email subscription service. I invested in a few what I felt were really critical tools. And some of them, I did the free trials. So they said you could try it free for 30 days. And after about 15 or so days, I'm like, nope, this isn't critical. I could do something different. And so that first few months, I was trying a lot of new stuff that I was just feeling my way around. Mm-hmm. And so I spent my $1,000. I didn't have a lot left over for the book. But I saw it as an investment. And I felt like, even if I did have to go back to work at the end of the year, I had a website and a book. Yeah. And the earning potential of that down the road was unknown as well. So I should mention that in that blogging thing, I think it lasted about 5 days to a week. Obviously, those kind of events are meant to sign people up for a course. And it was just impossible. It was hard enough to get $1,000 budget for the nuts and bolts. So I knew I couldn't do it. And I wasn't the only one who was struggling with that. So a group of us left that course and we started this blogging group that was meant to sustain us until the next year when we could maybe afford to do it then. But that group of women have become my sisters that have encouraged me, who have given me so much advice in this process. Like that, it's the first group I go to say, does anybody know what to do about this? And what about this? And they have been my best cheerleaders. And when I didn't have money to pay an editor, so I went on there when my book was finished and said, I need volunteer editors, which was a suggestion I had heard at the conference, if you couldn't afford editing, to get volunteers. So I'm like, I need volunteers to edit my book, and I can't pay you. And all you really are going to get is my gratitude and a free signed book when it's published. And by the way, if you say yes, you have 10 days to do it. And amazingly, 5 people from my group stepped up to the plate to do that for me.
No.
One of them gave me 400 edits on my book. And I'm telling you, that was such a wonderful gift. I'm so appreciative of that. And those women, they made my book better. And so I sent them all their book, and they really were wonderful to me. They encouraged me so much.
Were they just making comments on a PDF? How did you physically get that turned around so quickly in 10 days?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, basically I had like I said, I finished NaNoWriMo on July 31st. And I think it was, the 7th of August, I was headed out of town on a self-hosted, it was supposed to be a self-hosted writing retreat, but I had actually written my book by then. So it became a self-hosted editing retreat. So I was leaving on the 7th, but I was giving myself some time to get settled in. So I uploaded my manuscript, which I now know was way too rough to be handing off to people. I should have done a little bit more with it in formatting and just self-editing. But this was a new thing for me. Yeah. So I uploaded the PDF to Dropbox. I sent the link to all of them. And I just kind of said, download that PDF to your favorite editor and make markings on it and send it back to me. And I got back editing in all different ways, and it was a little difficult, but overall it was doable, just going through the different sheets and a lot of the edits overlapped. So, the one who gave me 400 edits pretty much covered everything, but believe it or not, there were some people that introduced some edits that she hadn't even have caught. So yeah, the editing was grueling. That took 2 full weeks.
Mm-hmm. Is that like 8 hours a day kind of weeks?
Yeah. It was more consuming than the writing.
Did you use a template, or was that editing getting all the words right and all the, the proofing right and the layout?
No, it wasn't the formatting. I did the formatting myself because I love to format stuff. So none of it was formatting. It was all like, there was this wrestle match between Canadian and American spelling. So, sometimes they were suggesting the American spelling and not realizing that I'm in Canada. So that wasn't the spelling error. So there was some of that. But no, there was, one person said, look, you're saying a lot of nice things, but I don't see any data backing it up. I hadn't done any research. Or very minimal research. So I also spent some of my editing time doing some research kind of after the fact to back up what I had already had in my spirit, what I already knew was true, but I needed to go find some things and add some footnotes in to satisfy the people who I realize now there's 2 classes of people. There's emotional people and there's fact people. And my book, while I believed everything was true, it wasn't to the satisfaction of fact-based people.
That's such a good point. And I mean, that's the advantage of another set of eyes, because we have our approach, we have our way of understanding this situation we're writing about, and we have our idea of what will I say to help people understand this and engage with it and receive these truths into their own life Well, there's different kind of people, and they might want to see different kind of information.
Mm-hmm.
My heartfelt story, my sort of what is it called? The like testimonial style data is might not really satisfy some of those doubters.
Yes. Yep. I realized that, initially it irritated me a bit. I'm like, what? But I realized the person suggesting that was really doing me a huge favor, because if they're a friend of mine and they felt that way,
Yes.
what about people who don't know me? And I didn't want to be dismissed instantly because I didn't do just that little extra legwork to back up what I was saying. And then, some of the editing was as simple as educating me on some basic grammar. Like I said, I moved a lot. I went to a lot of different schools. So even though I loved English and I've always been a writer, I have huge learning gaps. And so I didn't realize I had such learning gaps until I got schooled a little bit. And so even though it was a bit intense, my writing and grammar usage has improved dramatically just from that experience.
Yeah, I always say editing is a brilliant learning and growing experience as a writer. I love to be edited. I'm like, thank you, because wow, I didn't even know that that was an issue with my writing, you know.
Yeah. It's a gift, and I had to find it though, because I'm naturally I shy away from criticism.
Yeah,
That's really
it's
tough.
hard.
Yeah.
But that's where you have to separate your words, your precious baby book, and from yourself personally. Because even now, the book can't be the part of your identity that you're trying to get your value from, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, no. Suzette says, I love the way you forged ahead fearlessly. I'm inspired.
And that's what I really hope. And that's actually part of the prophecy that I feel like I received at IHOP is they said that I have a gift, and it's to encourage others, to tell them, go, you can do this. And so if my story helps anybody to feel like, well, if she can do that, I can too,
Yeah.
then that is totally, I believe, what God's purpose is for me. So,
Amen.
yeah.
Angelique says, I love hearing about the power of community. How did you navigate maintaining the sound of your own voice while embracing the sisterhood of those who stepped up to help you?
Oh, you mean the editing? My
Mhm.
my volunteer editors?
Yes.
You know what? They were so respectful. Even the one who did 400 edits, when she wrote, how she would phrase it, she made it really clear. She's like, "This is your book. These are your words. This is just a suggestion." She did it so gently and so nicely. So I never felt like I was being forced to say something um, that wasn't me. In fact, there was a few edits I did veto. I
Yeah.
said, you know what? I don't. This is what I actually meant to say, and I'm leaving it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's valid. Jennifer says, did Canadian or US spelling win out in the end? I'm a Canadian too, and I have wondered what Canadians normally do in this regards.
I figured I'm a Canadian. I stuck with my Canadian spelling. But I think it's your personal choice. Even though, obviously, I would hope to tap into the U.S. market and hope that our U.S. Readers don't think that I'm illiterate. But if they look into it and they realize that the author is Canadian, they'll understand.
Yeah, it might give it a certain exotic feel.
There you go.
Nikki says, did you use Microsoft Word to format or something else? You said you enjoy formatting. What did you use and how did you do that?
Okay, so obviously I started in Scrivener and I used their nonfiction format at beginning. And then when it was ready to compile and start formatting, I did bring it into Microsoft Word. And I do have, from my administrative work, I'm self-taught in everything. I never went to school for computers or for computer processing. Everything I've ever learned to do with computers is completely self-taught. Okay, so I'll go back a little bit. When I started my job in administration, we had a woman who was in charge of desktop publishing, and she was in charge of the photocopier. And when I would ask her for help, she never just helped me. She always taught me how to do it myself. And you know what? I thank her for that, because she taught me so much about editing and formatting. Sorry, not editing, formatting in different programs. She kind of took me behind the scenes and showed me some things about how to do it properly. And that lesson, that her name's Stephanie, if she's listening.
Yay, Stephanie.
She did me the best favor. And, sometimes we can be tempted to do something quick and ask somebody else to do it for us and not learn how to do it ourselves. But we're doing ourselves a disservice, because it takes a little time on the onset to learn a new skill. But once you have that skill, and it becomes part of your toolbox, something that you can draw on in the future, and it never takes that long again after you've learned.
And that's such a nice example, too, of how the Lord was preparing you.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's going back, 10 years ago. So
yeah. Praise the Lord for putting Stephanie in your life.
Yes.
Jennifer wants to hear a little bit more about Scrivener. So give us what you love about it. Why would somebody want to use Scrivener?
I love Scrivener. Okay, so because I'm a very visual person, I have to see everything. It drives my husband crazy. He has a whole different thought and understanding process. Me, I gotta see it. And so Scrivener, what I love about it is it's almost like, how you talk a lot about using Post-it notes. Well, they actually have, as part of their views, you can see all your documents like Post-it notes that you can rearrange at will. And so that's one function, but it also has kind of like your typical, I want to say like your Microsoft Explorer menu file thing where but you can grab a file and drag it wherever you want. So there were some of my editing suggestions were that, this chapter seems like it should have been in another place of the book. Then it was as simple as just grabbing that chapter and just dragging it to another part of the book. And when I'm brainstorming, I was able to kind of do an outline that was very fluid, and it didn't involve a lot of complicated things to move. It was quite easy to just click and drag over. Now, when I say about the clicking and dragging, that's on a desktop computer. If you're doing it on your iPad or your iPhone, it is a little more complicated to move things around, but it's still totally doable.
I wonder if you can get a little mouse. I guess it just depends on how big your screen is. Like when you're on a smaller screen, sometimes it's hard to get stuff. You're not seeing as much of the big picture.
No, actually, the format in iOS is actually different. So it wouldn't make a difference if you had a mouse.
Okay.
So if you had to only pick, well, it also depends on where you do your best writing and brainstorming. I use it mostly on my iPad with a keyboard case, but that's where I just sit down and I type just whatever comes to my mind. But when I do any kind of editing, I have to be at a desktop, and that's when I start moving things around and tweaking things. And so I have the drag and the click and drag option when I'm on my desktop.
Beth says, I love Scrivener too, so worth the investment.
Yeah.
And Jennifer says, why did you move your manuscript to Word from Scrivener?
Because actually you can do some formatting in Scrivener, but I haven't really figured that part out yet. And the document that you submit to KDP needs to be it depends on what part of KDP. If you're doing the ebook, you're moving, it's kind of complicated, but you move your ebook from Word, I think, into their editor, the Kindle editor. And then with the, no, I'm trying to remember. I'm sorry. I think that it has to be a Microsoft Word manuscript for KDP for publishing an actual book, if I remember correctly.
I think it's a PDF.
Okay, so you have it different. For some reason, I'm getting confused at this point because I remember if you did it as a PDF, then it looked different. But I
Oh,
could be getting some details scrambled. I apologize.
okay. Well, oh, that's okay.
But formatting in Word was my haunting ground. That's where,
Yeah, you were familiar with it.
yes, and you could do your. There's a lot of little features where it has the menu or the table of contents feature is awesome because it does it automatically. If you format your document correctly, it's all done automatically for you.
In Word?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I've, I've spent many hours wrestling with tables of content.
Yeah, like if you use the proper headers, it'll just populate that table of contents automatically. But it's
Oh,
tricky.
I
You have
need
to
you
make
to be
sure
my
you format
Stephanie.
them.
Suzette says, I've joined a few writers' Facebook groups because I'm having trouble finding writers to meet with in person. She loves that you just ask for help editing and the way you use all available resources. You're a resourceful lady, Melissa.
Aw. Well, I'll tell you too, the one thing I almost had a meltdown over and I almost hired out on is the cover. I mean, I was almost in tears over my cover because I know how important it is to have a beautiful cover. You shouldn't judge a book by a cover, but we all do. And I wanted a beautiful layout, and I am not a desktop publisher. I can do some basic stuff, but I mean, the book cover was out of my league. And that was the one place where I wrestled because I thought, I feel like maybe I should get a professional in. Um, and I utilized friends. So I did up a mock cover and I sent it out to friends and family and said, like, vote on the ones you like the best. And so I utilized community for that as well. But one of the people I sent it to was my sister-in-law, and she does do some desktop publishing, but I would never presume to ask her to do it for me for free. But she graciously said, hey, I like your cover, but give me a couple of minutes and I'll send you what I think it should look like. And she did. And I loved it. And that's when you get that
Oh,
beautiful script. I mean, she did it in, 10 minutes. It was really quick for her, but I loved it. It was exactly what I wanted. So I said, well, do you mind giving me the names of those fonts? And do you mind if I just kind of reproduce what you did on my own? So I did, and she was fine with it. And yeah, so I did have just a little nudge, a little bit of creative help from a sister-in-law for that. But it wasn't intensive. She did not do it for me. She just said, she took what I already put out there and polished it a bit and said, what about that?
that's great. And that's another evidence of the Lord's provision to you.
Yes, it was, because that was a big deal. And I wanted my book to look pretty and I wanted it to appeal to women. And
And
that,
that's not just a vain desire. It's actually critical. It
mhm.
really is. And it's one of the few places that we really recommend, if you can invest, really do it there.
And I would say the same. If you
Yeah,
don't have those skills, that is a place to put down your money.
yeah. It's the editing, the and the cover. You want to make sure it is well written, and if it's riddled with errors, people just aren't going to put up with that. And if it's unclear and you've rambled on and really you kind of got things a little bit out of order, and people, they're just not going to continue to plow through your book if it's not well written. But nor are they going to open it up in the first place if it isn't attractive on the cover. So I'm
Um,
so glad your sister-in-law came through for you.
yeah, I am too. I want to mention another mistake I made that ended up being providential. When I used Scrivener and it did the compile feature, uh, when I popped it out for editing, it was all double spaced. And when I did the formatting, I never fixed that. I didn't have any experience with how spaced it should be. And it wasn't until I uploaded the manuscript and it said how much my book was going to cost to print based on the thickness and the size of the book that I started thinking, oh, if I had condensed my spacing a bit more, my book would cost less. And I feel like maybe I did a mistake there. But at that point, I didn't want to go backwards. I didn't want to fix it. So I thought, you know what? This is version 1 of my book. If I do a version 2, I'll fix it then. And I can't even tell you how many women have opened my book and sighed in relief and said, I could read this. I love your spacing. And so the
Oh,
one thing I really thought I had done wrong ended up becoming one of the features of my book that women loved the most.
oh, that is so brilliant. I'm glad you shared that tidbit with us.
So even if you think you're going to make a mistake, like it's a learning process. So
It
you're
is.
going to make mistakes. And the only thing you can do is just move on and learn from it and then try again.
Amen. And that's how Jenny and I approach everything at Flourish Writers, because we're always just sharing with you all what we've tried and how it worked and what didn't work so well, and that's how we have really good firsthand practical experience to share with all of you here at Flourish Writers, is because we just went ahead and did it. We like to say in Flourish, just do it afraid. You're not waiting for it to be perfect. You're not waiting for it to be all figured out, because there's no such thing, because you've got to set the ball in motion. There has to be motion. There has to be something happening. Otherwise, if you're kind of holding on to it and saying, oh no, I'm only going to release it when I've got everything 100% exactly right, you might actually plan out of it, like the spacing. You might plan out of it with all your over attention and over fiddling. You might take out of it the very thing that's going to be one of its benefits.
Well, I believe in the Holy Spirit filter. So, like, sometimes you put out your weakness, and just like a picture that you take of yourself and you go on Snapchat or take a filter and it makes that picture look so much better. You know how many times I pray, Holy Spirit, just be my filter right now. If I've said something and I didn't say it exactly the right way, that when the reader reads it, let them read it the way you intended it. I'm constantly praying for that Holy Spirit filter, because, God doesn't wait for us to become perfect people to use us. He uses broken people. He uses flawed people. And so I had to go into this knowing I'm going to probably say something in my book that's not right, or I might have mistakes in my book, but I just have to believe that the message and getting it out there is more important, and that the Holy Spirit will take care of the rest, and people will be able to receive it, and it will create change in their lives.
Amen. And when you're putting it out there as a gift, it's really about what the Lord is going to do with it. Not sometimes one of the things that holds us back as well is there's the element of my reputation or my pride, or and I'm pretty picky about typos, and I like the words to be just right. And it's been so good for me to work with Jenny, because she's like, Mindy, it's good enough. I'm like, no, it's not perfect yet. And I just have to be okay with good enough, because there again, my identity and how I'm finding my value, it's not in a perfect something that I put out into the world. No, it is my obedience, my faithfulness, and my saying yes. That's it.
Exactly. And I have a chapter on perfectionism in my book. And perfectionism, if it's causing you to not produce
Yeah.
at all, it's really getting in the way. Like, it's okay to have excellence. It's
Yeah.
okay to do your best and strive to produce something that would honor and glorify God, and you know, to be a quality piece of work. But if your perfectionism means that you never get past your first chapter, or you never get to the publishing stage, then it's counterproductive.
Oh boy. You can preach that all day long. That is such an important message, Melissa. Oh, well,
Oh,
yeah,
so
carry
just
on.
one more thing. You
Oh,
mentioned
please.
about
Yeah.
um, our reputations. And I have to say, the choices I made in the last year were really tough because I felt like I was making choices that a lot of people might have judged being like, because I left a ministry job. I'm sure there are people who felt like I stepped out of God's will because I left a ministry job. Um, because I decided not to work for a year and basically live off of my husband for a year. I know there were people who looked at me and thought, well, that's not very good. That's not very fair. You just live off your husband. Or people who thought, it must be nice that you just take a year off of work, and not everybody has that luxury. um, Putting yourself out there in a book, as any writer, I wasn't prepared for that, how vulnerable that was. Yeah, so when you say about protecting our reputations, you really just have to become a person who's willing to trust your reputation to the Lord. And it's okay to be small. It's okay to look insignificant. It's okay to make mistakes. If God is working in and through your life, it will be worth it, and He will make something beautiful out of it.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Jill says, you're in a new ministry now. God chooses the ministry. I'm so glad you're here. And Margaret says, I love the fact that our writing can be a gift. It takes obedience. Yes. And everybody's commenting on perfectionism.
Oh yeah.
So, um, but that's such an important closing thought for us to take away, Melissa, because when you're signing up for the writing life, you're signing up for putting yourself out there. And if you're going to let other people's opinion of you stop you, then you're not going to do a whole lot of writing.
Yeah, you have to get pretty immune to what other people think.
Yeah.
Consider it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, you are gracious and aware of other people's perspectives, but by no means does that need to adjust what you have heard from the Lord, and you're following him. I mean, your obedience is between you and the Lord. You're not doing that. You're not taking a year off work and writing your book and all that to please other people or to get them to pat you on the back. You're doing it because that's what the Lord called you to do. And everybody is going to have their slightly different take on what that is. What is it for me? What is it for all of you listening here? It's going to be slightly different, but there will be something where we obey on our path. What is that, God? When you come knocking on the door of my heart, I want to hear the knock, first of all, and I want to open the door and invite you in and then listen. What is that thing you're calling me to? Okay. Wow, that sounds a little crazy. That sounds a little big. That sounds a little radical. Are you sure? And then eventually, hopefully, we each come to the place where we do accept what he's telling us, because I've learned from experience, it is frustrating when you're saying no to God.
mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
want to be there. Hate it. So, Melissa, thank you so much for being with us on this Flourish Writers coaching call. What a special, special treat. Everybody's commenting. Thank you, Melissa. This was so amazing. I just know people were blessed in so many ways, not only because your message just touches our lives, what you wrote about and shared about, but also your writing journey. You so lived it in your writing journey, and we got to encounter that and experience that through you today. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to thank you and give you the credit that you deserve, you and Jenny both, and all your wonderful speakers. And just thank you, everybody who tuned in today and heard my heart and my story. I appreciate it, and I'm excited for you. Go write your book and just be daring and live your life.
Yes, amen. And you can find Melissa on leavingbusy.com. So if you are not yet familiar with her book, look her up and you will be blessed. So thanks, Flourish Writers. Always such a joy to be on here with you for this coaching call. And thanks again, Melissa. Bye-bye.
Bye.